Back to a special edition of the Boo Crew Media Podcast. We have an absolute legend in studio today, Mike Hoss, now the play-by-play, the voice of the New Orleans Saints, alongside Mike Bergeron. First off, Mike Hoss, how are you today?
Thank you. I'm great, man. This is awesome. It takes me a while to get used to voice of the Saints. You know what I mean? Because when I was looking and trying to get the job, it was all about announcer for Odyssey and WWL radio and play-by-play. And then that first night, it was, Christian Garrick and Bobby and Deuce and everybody. And there was like the voice of the Saints. And I was just like looking around like, whoa, that's wait a minute. That's it. I mean, that was the first, because I was never introduced like that. Never been introduced like that.
Right.
And that was like, that really, that hit home.
Sure.
Well, that pretty much answers my first question. I think part of I think one of the most exciting things is that you have a really big passion for New Orleans and the Saints. I even read that you call this place home since you got here in 1989.
89.
Do you view that as a hurdle to mix, I guess, passion with professionalism?
No, only because I've done it all. So when I got here, I was a sports reporter. I covered the Saints. That was my job. I went to lacrosse. I covered them. I did 4th Down on 4. Channel 4 did the preseason games. I mean, we did them. I was the sidelines. Jim and Archie were in the booth. And so I covered them. That was my job. And then when I flipped over to news in 2006, I became a fan, like a season ticket holder. And I thought that would just be, all right, kind of cool, but I went off the edge and it just became I guess when you get into sports, the first thing you lose is the ability to be a fan. And nobody really, they don't understand, they go, what do you mean? I go, well, I sit in the press box in a suit and then I just write stuff for 3 hours and then I go interview naked, sweaty men and then I go back to Channel 4 and work for 7 more hours. So that was my game day experience. So I guess all that pent up kind of not being a fan, and then 06. And again, so I covered the Saints in some rough times, and then but 06, Drew and Sean, they go to the NFC Championship game, and then they've been winning ever since. I'm like, this is awesome. So I guess all that pent up not being a fan really came out. And then in 2017, they hired me to do sidelines. So then I really was an employee of them. So I've covered them, a fan of them, an employee of them. I feel like I've been a part of the organization in some way all the way through. So just those different levels kind of gives me, I know that organization. I know what they want. I know what they don't want. So
right.
I think that's a good thing. That's a positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've been there on all levels over 30 plus years.
Yeah. I never do the math of 89. It's always 30 plus. I say 30 plus. Start figuring that out because I got here right in January of 89. I interviewed, and I got here. They were in Mardi Gras. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, it weren't like Mardi Gras Day. This is like in the weeks, 2 weeks. Right. But I was just like, what in the world? So, and I had never been here before. I didn't know anybody here. I'd never been here. I was like, whoa, this place is crazy, man.
Yeah,
so
it's intense.
Yeah. And so you either get on board and you either love New Orleans or you don't. And there's not two different people. You either get it or you don't get it. And I've said this a lot. This is boring for people, but if you don't get it, it's okay. People here are like, all right, we understand. Believe me, we understand.
Yeah.
But if you don't get it, guess what? You never will. You're not going to. It's not going to happen 5 years from now.
Right.
It's not going to go, oh, hey, I get it. No, you either do or you don't. And I just did. And met my wife here, started a family here. And yeah, this was never the plan. The plan was 2 years and keep going towards Washington, D.C., which is where original home was. And that was the plan, to get back to that television market. And that was, 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess
stole you.
We're a little past plan B at this point.
Right. One thing I noticed is play-by-play guys, they're really on the ball. They know everything about everybody, every team. But like players, are they prepping? You're prepping weeks ahead of time? Or, do you also have guys in the booth with y'all feeding y'all information?
You have, but the guys that are in the booth are your spotters,
right,
and or your statisticians. So they're more your game, what's happening game wise. No, it's all research. It is all you. That is, as the play-by-play guy. I mean, that's my job. I mean, I can't do what Deuce does,
Right.
And so it is all about preparation. And I had the luxury of watching Jim Henderson do it for 12 years, and and when he was doing it, it wasn't like he could go Google Jacksonville Jaguars and just, all these, every stat from the history of time come up. It was calling the NFL. In fact, I was trying to think about how we didn't have the internet. So the NFL would put out their stats like Monday or Tuesday, and it would be faxed, and the Saints would put out, Tuesday was a day off. The Saints would put out their stuff like Wednesday. So you'd get numbers, but it would be like Wednesday. Yeah. So it was a way different ballgame. But I watched him and the meticulousness of how he prepared, and really that's what you have to do. And I've even talked to Zach. Zach's the same way. Zach, you're always way over prepared.
Yeah.
You have to have 5 facts on the backup fullback, knowing that guy's probably never going to have a game where you need 2 facts. But you know what? If he does have a game and you need 5, you better be ready. And so it's always about being over prepared from the play-by-play standpoint, because that's my job. I have to, if there's a lull in the action for whatever reason, and they're looking at a call, and the last play was by the tight end, and people were talking about that play by the tight end. Maybe they're reviewing it, so we're talking about the tight end.
Oh,
you better know something about that tight end beyond 1 or 2 things, because that happens a lot these days. Where we're reviewing plays and they're reviewing a catch or not catch, and typically, you're not always following the action on television. We're not like going, okay, they're showing his feet down here. You're not really describing that because you're on the radio.
Right.
So you just have to know, and it's work. I mean, I've already started. I'm working on Baltimore, which, that game scares me to death.
Baltimore,
and then Jacksonville, and, getting ready for Green Bay, and you just, every little, note that happens now, like something like about with Dallas, and I'll write it, I have a Dallas book and I'll write it down June, whatever, Dallas did this, just background.
Right. I guess that comes into play with having you've worked with Deuce over the years, I'm sure, on the different programming with WWL, and you covered his playing career.
Did some, not a ton, we know each other, know of each other, respect each other. And we did some practice stuff because I obviously was in the game for job in 2018 when Jim retired.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a game with Deuce, and the easiest way to describe it is, if you can't get along with Deuce, quite frankly, get out of the industry. Because he's knowledgeable, he's nice, he's humble. So I'm not that, of all the things I am kind of, challenged by, I'm not concerned, but that getting along with Deuce is not one of them.
Not one of them at all.
What's that going to be like? Deuce has been in that, booth now for forever. How long now? I mean, is there going to be some type of comfort level with him, and things like that?
It'll take time.
Sure. I mean, it's just like any great team.
Like, it doesn't, I've listened to a lot of Zach and Deuce on the radio. You can listen to NFL Game Pass, again, stuff that they didn't have years ago. I can listen to every game that they've done for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And so, he's, in 2017, Deuce was with Jim Henderson. And then for 3 years, he's been with Zach. So I'm his 3rd play-by-play guy in 5 years, and so, and everybody's different. And so it just, you take time, and it's, it's not going to be perfect right away. It's going to take time, but it's about knowing. And for my job, I'm like, get the hell out of the way. Tell the people to play and let Deuce analyze it. Cause that's what, they're either listening to it or at the game, listening to it on the radio, or they're listening to it at home with the sound down. So they've seen the play. Shut up, Mike. Let me see what Deuce has to say. That's my job title. I wrote that down. Shut up, Mike.
I'm ready to print some t-shirts and shut up, Mike.
No doubt.
My wife, she already got some printed.
That's perfect. That's so good.
I got one. Do you have a favorite Saints moment that's not
Super Bowl?
The Super Bowl ones or the Gleason punt? Like the ones that everybody's going to say.
I have 2. One of them is weird because it is the first one is Hakeem dropped the ball.
Oh, that's a great one.
Because again, they'd been there, playoff games, home playoff games, all this stuff, and killing the Rams. And all of a sudden I'm like, what is happening here? And the Rams came back, And when he dropped the ball, and again, I'm covering it, so I don't hear Jim's call.
Oh wow!
Right,
Yeah.
so you don't hear that. That comes later, but just that feeling. And we did Channel 4 did a complete show right after the game underneath the stands, and that feeling of that first playoff win is just I know that Garrett Hartley and all that, which is ironically number 2 for me. So that to me is up there. When you take away the Super Bowl, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
But the NFC Championship game, same thing. So as soon as the game's over, Channel 4 is going live to me down underneath the stands, win, lose, or draw.
Right.
So I watched the game from my seat until like the fourth quarter, and then went down to get ready for the show. So I'm underneath the stands where the Saints locker room is. There's monitors. And so they call timeout. Garrett's talking to Sean. My producer calls me. I'm talking to the producer. I go back to turn around, and the crowd goes nuts. I never saw the Garrett.
Oh, wow.
I'm just like, what? Wait, what? And they went, okay, we're coming to you in 5. I'm like,
oh man,
it was. I mean, obviously, you didn't really need to see it, but I was just like, what? I missed what was the greatest, moment of Saints history. Not to mention, I'm underneath the stands. I'm standing by myself. I'm like, okay.
Oh my,
great,
gosh.
Good job.
I can imagine how loud
High five.
that was.
It was, yeah. I mean, the stands were rumbling.
Yeah.
When we did go live, because the fans cheered for 20 more minutes.
Yeah.
I was there. They wouldn't leave. So I was screaming, just and I tell people, Jeff, I go, who's watching me?
Right now,
who's watching the game?
I'm pretty sure I was outside at that point.
You know what? I'm gonna flip over and see what Mike Hoss has to say. I bet he's underneath the stands. I bet he'll have a good vantage point of that Garrett Hartley kick. Let's go see what he's got. And we actually had a really great show after that with the guests and different stuff. And Jim came down, and but so anyway, at another time, I'll tell you the Kim Kardashian NFC Championship and Super Bowl moment. That story's way too long. But I've told that story to Reggie Bush, who was involved in it, Tracy Porter, who was involved in it, and they both just die laughing.
That's tough.
Is that the one when she was coming on the field?
Yeah, and the Super Bowl, and then the first one was the NFC Championship game. And I'll tell you that one because that's quick.
Yeah.
And so
we had all the time in the world, Mike. So don't worry about it.
so this was they win the NFC Championship, and so we're milling around down underneath the stands, and Kim Kardashian's there. So I was not a big reality TV star. I didn't know. I knew of her, but I didn't really know anything about her. So she's like holding court, but she could not be any nicer than she was being. And quite frankly, everything that you've heard or seen in pictures, she is stunningly beautiful, just beautiful. So I was like, that's great. So, but my producers at the station, all young women, Kim Kardashian, they were like, I could hear them in my ear. You better get me a picture of Kim Kardashian. So this was whatever phone version I had. It was brutal. So and so I'm trying to get a picture of Kim, but not look like a creepy old guy.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of holding my phone kind of at my chest, and I'm just kind of just gently backing up in order to get a picture of Kim. And I bump into this guy. And I turn around, and it's Reggie. It's Reggie on the phone, and it's the most. Thank God you can see this. It's the most classic moment. He just looks at me and he just goes, "Dude." He didn't say anything else. He was cool about it. He just went,
"Dude, come on."
I was like, I couldn't. I've told him the story. He laughs, but it was just that moment when I backed him. I went, "Oh!" And turn out there's Reggie on the phone. And he went, "Dude."
Oh, that's great.
So it was, that night it was crazy. I mean, that whole,
And I'm sure the Super Bowl week takes, that's the icing on the cake and everything, right?
But again, it was weird. I mean, it's the Super Bowl week. We were in Miami. The game, it would be like, okay, we're in Miami. The media would be in Hanville, we'll say. That's so
okay. So like
we're
relation
in
New Orleans.
Media headquarters was in Hanville.
Oh wow,
that's where
the game would be in La Place.
So logistics are not great right
It
there.
was horrible, and traffic was disastrous. I mean, so you're driving up to the media. I can't think of the name of it. I actually went to spring break there in '83,
30 plus years ago.
right? And so it was just it was work. I mean, it was that week.
Right.
I mean, the game was on our air. It was Super Bowl
Right,
44
CBS, on CBS, right?
on Channel 4. You know, good Lord, you know, everything had lined up. The stars of so we were on the air, I think, like 24/7, 24/7. It was to the point of, and at the time it was the mayoral election. They had the mayoral election Saturday.
Wow.
Before the Saints game on Sunday.
Sure.
When Mitch Landry. So I just remember, it's funny, you know, we were sitting around we had trailers that we were working in, and we were like, Saturday afternoon, we were like, oh God, thank God, man, we're done. We've given it everything we could do. We were just spent. And I got a call from the news desk at Channel 4, and I said, what are y'all doing from 7 to 8? And we're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, yeah, you guys are doing a show because the polls don't close. We need a show to fill us to get to our election coverage. We're doing an hour show. We've talked about this. And I was like, I remember that my producer, Joe Friesard, and I were like, are you kidding? We're doing an hour show in 5 hours from now. And we did stories, we got guests, and we did that show. But literally at 2:00, we were like, we have a show?
Oh,
And this was the Saturday night before the game. We'd done everything, checked every box except that one.
gosh.
So,
I want to piggyback on that because I think this is a big conversation in the NFL is that the city of New Orleans is going to get a Super Bowl here in the next couple of years. I don't know what other places you've covered a Super Bowl, but I can't imagine the city of New Orleans. I think it's the best place to host a Super Bowl. I mean, hands down, right? I mean, they did it in New York. You know, when the Broncos and the Seahawks played, that was a disaster with the weather. And of course, Miami's great. But I think New Orleans, Miami, and maybe even Arizona out there.
But Miami's a disaster.
As you're saying, though, that's what
I mean, it's like literally you drive out to the game. When the game's over, you're all sitting there like, okay, well, I guess where are we going? What are we doing?
Right.
So, I mean, Miami's nice because of the weather.
Right.
But, you know, and so I'm trying to think. I don't think I've covered any Super Bowls other places. I've covered several, you know, many of them here. But I mean, there's hands down. I've been to every other stadium. So I mean, they had one in Minnesota, you know, freezing, you know, because you got to think of it as a week. You can't think
because it's freezing.
You can't think of it as the day.
Didn't Dallas snow too?
Game day. Yeah, it was cold.
One year.
It did. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so it's
recently.
just there's no. I mean, you know, SoFi this year or next year.
But that's in the middle of.
Will be, you know,
that's out of
San Francisco. There's no place. I mean, Minnesota's. And when you think of downtown state, Charlotte's is it downtown state? I'm just thinking of Atlanta. You know,
not Atlanta.
Just thinking of downtown state. You know, Washington's out. I mean, there's just so many. But it's not even just the downtown. That you also have to have the ability to have thousands of hotel rooms, which we do.
Right.
And in everything's in walking distance. So bar none, we are unquestionably, this is not me being, you know, biased or it's true. New Orleans by far the best place, the whole Super Bowl.
And I also think that's for the Final Four. I think it's for the national championship. I think it's the All-Star game. Yeah, it's the same exact thing.
Part of the reason
any organization that has to do it, who can set up their headquarters at the Hyatt, you know, and walk over and do everything.
And the casino's right there, Bourbon Street's down, you know,
I mean,
French, all that stuff.
Everything's a walking
right
distance
there.
for sure.
So it's the best. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to 25. I mean, it's, you know, as you now know, I mean, it's not like it used to be where you felt like you were even in a rotation. You know, first off, for many years, if you built a new stadium, you got a game, you know, build a new stadium, get the game. You know, it was almost part of the lease. Okay, look, we're going to spend all this money, but you're going to give us the game, right? And so they did. And so New Orleans got out of it. It's hard to get in. I mean, the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation, the city, ASM Glow, all these entities, the Saints that work so hard to get these games because they're not a given anymore. They're not just because other cities will do anything. They now realize, I mean, it's what it is, you know, to have this game. And so,
yeah, and that's what I think. I mean, I know you see the renovations going on in the Superdome. I think Miss Benson's doing it in the Smoothie King Center after the Superdome renovations and all that different kind of stuff. But no, I think I say it all the time. New Orleans is the best place to host any big event every time.
I mean, you can't. I'll argue with anybody who wants to take that other side of that argument. Easily,
Yeah,
you'd
for
be,
sure.
it'd be hard pressed to find
Go all
somebody.
day.
Sure.
You mentioned Miss Benson. I saw on your Instagram the other day where she signed the clipping of the newspaper and sent it to you.
Yeah.
How cool was that?
I mean, it's, she's a very humble, generous, classy woman. I've known, we call her Miss Gale, Mrs. Benson. She's best friends with Angela Hill. And so when I was at Channel 4 and young, and my family was in Virginia, but I was always working for the holidays. I never got off for the holidays.
Right.
And Channel 4 and seniority, people there 30 years. I was like, I've been here 2. So I never got off. So Angela would bring she called them the orphans. She'd bring the orphans over to her house for holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I would spend at Angela's house, big meal, and Miss Gale would be there. So I've known her for many, many years. And just, what you see is what you get. She is just as sweet, just as Southern charm, just as gracious. And really what she's done and what Mr. Benson had already started with the philanthropy in this city is untouchable.
Right.
I mean, untouchable. You talk to 50 high schools who they have helped along the way. So yeah, that was, it's still in the newspaper form, but it will be in a frame properly on my wall very soon.
That's awesome. And then I guess one of the final questions I have for you, Mike, is, this year you're gonna be the play-by-play guy. You got Halloween at home against the Bucks. You got Bills coming for Thanksgiving, things like that. What game are you looking forward to the most this year? Because there's some really, really good games on this schedule that I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that there's one per se. I'm looking, all the home games. The Thursday night games are weird. I think maybe Dallas.
Coming to the Dome.
Dallas coming to the Dome. I've had more texts and tweets about Dallas coming from friends, and there's always. Sean was there, and it was a long time ago,
right?
But there's still beating the Cowboys, when they come to your building, and so I think that'll be interesting. And I think the Tampa return, the Tampa game, it just means so much. I couldn't tell you, a lot about all the Tampa games combined in the last 10 years, but now that you circle them almost as fast as you circle the Atlanta games. I mean, Brady coming back, and if it's Jameis, that'll be, going to be crazy. So who knows? I mean, about the quarterback situation, but that Dallas game to me and the Tampa game, and I'm curious. It's so funny because we've lived in this fantasy world with Drew Brees for so long. We're like the other teams now. I look at the schedule and I look at all the teams who have all these questions at quarterback, or it's a rookie, it's Trevor, or the Jets, or it's Sam Darnold, and right. All these teams that have all these kind of with Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be there. It's just like, it's so interesting because really we're not, when you look at those games right now, they have more quarterback questions than we do,
right.
And so it's just like when you go through the entire schedule, look at Russell Wilson, what he went through the off season, he's back. But I mean, there was a time you didn't know. And, with Ryan and Atlanta, and Brady, there's just, what is Sam Darnold going to be like? So there's so many questions about the quarterbacks on this schedule or they're rookies, brand new rookies. So I just think it's such an interesting schedule. It's AFC East, NFC East. So, traveled to New England, who's that going to be? Cam again? Again, there's another one. Is it going to be Cam? Is it going to be Mac?
Right.
There's so many teams that have all these
storylines are so big.
Right.
So it's funny. I'm a diehard Red Sox fan. My mom's from Newark, New Jersey. My brother went to Boston University. My mom went to Boston University. That weekend, the Red Sox host the Yankees at Fenway, and the Saints go to New England. So I was trying to get my wife. I was like, hey, can we maybe go to Fenway then to Gillette? Yeah. But that's another stadium that is 25 minutes out. And there's like a cool little community, but like at the same time, like after the game's done,
you certainly don't feel like you're in Boston.
You're not in Boston.
You need a
plan. I mean, there's one little road, like you go, the
delivery.
Traffic is horrible. So the new stadiums, I understand them, but at the same time, you don't see too many stadiums in the heart of the city like New Orleans
because it's too much. It costs too much.
Right.
The closest in my 30 plus years, the closest I ever came to missing a kickoff was New England, Boston. in Foxborough, really, was when me, Jim, and Archie we're doing a preseason game, and we'd left hours early. We don't mess around. Traffic,
Right.
rode in, traffic, some accident, and it was the closest we've ever come. It's preseason. And I go, now we're the broadcast team. There's no that we were all three together. It wasn't like, well, just use
Right.
yeah. And so we made it, but it was the closest we've ever come. And it poured rain that game. It was just brutal.
Was it how long ago was that preseason? It was.
I mean, it's 19, probably 1990, 91.
Oh,
Something
wow.
like that.
So it was the
92.
old,
it was
old
old,
Foxborough.
Yeah. It wasn't even the new.
Oh,
Wasn't even
gosh.
new. It was so. It was, and it was. I just remember we flew back to La Crosse that game, and so I was going back to La Crosse. So Jim, Archie were going back home, and so I flew with the team back to La Crosse. And so I was in a suit. I was silent reporter. It rained the entire game. The entire game. It was brutal. And so, and I didn't have any other clothes with me. Everything was in La Crosse. So I got on that plane in a wet suit, and then it was freezing. I've never been so cold in my life to fly back to La Crosse, Wisconsin. Funny what you remember.
Yeah, no.
That's what I remember from that game. That flight back on. Oh, good Lord.
Wow. So you got anything else?
I don't believe so.
Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I think you're just an absolute legend of this city. We're so excited for you to be the play-by-play guy now, and I know that I'll tune my radio or my TV down and turn you up now on
Joe
Sundays
Buck
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
maybe skip the Baltimore game.
First,
Thank you so much.
That Baltimore game is 180 people. It's a brand new new stadium for me. I'm like, oof. I'll have everybody that I've known since 2 listening. So I'm like, gosh, that to me is going to be the hardest game of all of them to schedule. The Baltimore game with all that rosters, and the
right.
backups are going to play 3/4 of the time. I will have to know the third string fullback for Baltimore, and I'm going to go, ooh, okay.
And that's why you're starting your preparation right now,
Yeah,
right? Because you'd rather be over prepared than under
I'll be like,
prepared.
so Deuce, what do you think of this third string fullback? Deuce, what do you think of this third string wide receiver?
Pray he did his homework.
Exactly right. So
he does.
that's great. So Mike Haas, the new voice of the New Orleans Saints, Mike Bergeron, and Justin Apley, we are signing off, and thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.